All right, let's get this straight from the start. I'm not just a beekeeper. Nope, I'm more like a landlord who just rented out a fully furnished studio apartment to 10,000 bees. And guess what? Rent isn't paid in dollars, it's paid in stings, buzzing noises at 3 a.m., and hopefully buckets of honey if I don't screw this up. But here's the kicker: before the hive becomes a hive, I need one very important tenant, the Beyonce of bees. The mother, the leader, the beating heart of this entire buzzing empire, the queen bee. Without her, this whole project is just me and 10,000 confused bugs throwing house parties in my living room. With her, we've got ourselves the makings of an empire. Now here's the problem. Have you ever tried to find one slightly larger insect in a swarm of thousands that all look like they just copy-pasted themselves? Imagine Where's Waldo, but Waldo can fly sting and is surrounded by 999 identical Waldos that are all screaming in unison. That's my life now. The bees don't make it easier either. They'll defend their queen like she's the last bottle of water at Coachella. Get too close, they'll dive bomb your veil like they've got Tom Cruise's flight instructor license. Meanwhile, I'm in my protective suit, which, spoiler alert, only works if you remember to zip it up. I learned that the hard way. Picture me running across the yard, slapping my leg, yelling, "Oh no, oh no, oh no," and yes, the neighbors now think I'm training for the strangest Olympic event ever. But eventually, after an hour of buzzing chaos and a sting count that made me question all my life choices, I saw her. The queen. She wasn't just flying, she was marching. That's right. The bees weren't swirling randomly anymore. They were forming a line, a literal royal parade following her scent like loyal fans at a Taylor Swift concert. And there she was, slightly bigger, strutting around like she owned the place, which, to be fair, she absolutely did. So here's the deal. Once you find the queen, you don't actually catch her like a Pokemon. You gently, very carefully convince her to step into a little cage, kind of like asking your grandma to get into an Uber, except your grandma doesn't have 10,000 bodyguards trying to stab the driver. I held my breath, scooped her in, and boom, the queen was mine. And as soon as I placed her in the new hive box, something incredible happened. The rest of the bees, they followed. Instantly. No hesitation. They weren't confused anymore. They weren't angry, well, maybe a little angry at me. They were marching again, this time into their brand new home. It was like magic, except instead of a wand, I had sweat dripping into my eyes and 3 stingers still stuck in my arm. So here we are. Day 1, the queen is inside, the bees are moving in, and I've officially upgraded my cabinet into a starter home for insects. Yep, you heard that right. I built them a tiny apartment with a tube so they could travel between the inside world and the outside garden. Because, bees like fresh air too. HGTV hasn't called yet, but I'm expecting a show offer any day now. The first nights were rough. Bees don't fly in the dark, which is great for moving them in, unless you forget that some of them are night owls with anger management issues. One wrong bump and they panic. And when bees panic, they don't just run around, they swarm. Imagine the world's angriest, smallest mosh pit, and you're the headline act. And yes, at one point I forgot to zip the suit again. Don't judge me. The bees swarmed my camera, my lights, my head, my everything. Have you ever heard bees buzzing inside your veil, right next to your ear? It's like having a chainsaw whisper. "Hey buddy, nice face you got there. Shame if something happened to it." But then just when I thought I'd ruined everything, I noticed a few bees standing near the hive entrance, fanning their wings. What the heck were they doing, spreading the queen's scent? That's right. These tiny little wing fans were blowing her perfume into the air, broadcasting to the colony party's overguy's mom's home. And one by one, the rest of the bees started to march, slowly, steadily, like soldiers in an army right into the hive. It was like watching a miracle in slow motion. And for a second, I forgot about the sting in my leg and just marveled at it. So why does this matter so much? Let me put on my science voice for a second. The queen bee isn't just a figurehead. She's the only one in the hive who can lay eggs up to 2,000 a day when she's in her prime. Without her, the colony can't grow, can't thrive, can't survive. She's basically the CEO, the HR department, and the fertility clinic rolled into one. And the workers, they live for her. Literally. They'll fan her scent, feed her, clean her, and defend her with their lives. But here's the twist: the queen doesn't rule like a dictator. She rules through chemistry. Her pheromones control the mood of the hive. Calm queen, calm hive. No queen pheromones, total bee anarchy. It's a chemical democracy where everyone just happens to worship one big egg-laying machine in the middle. Those first 10 days, they were all about adjustment. The queen pacing around her new palace laying the foundation for the next generation. The workers buzzing nervously trying to figure out their roles. Me pacing outside whispering, please don't die like a nervous parent on the first day of kindergarten. There were stumbles, there were stings, there was one unforgettable night where I may or may not have yelled help while bees crawled up my pant leg. But slowly, surely, things started to click. The queen settled in, the workers marched with purpose, and by the end of day 10, this wasn't just a box of bugs anymore. It was a hive. So here we are, 10 days in. I've survived barely. The queen has survived, thankfully. And the bees, they're finally acting like a community. But here's the thing, this is only the beginning. In the next phase, the queen's going to start laying eggs. Thousands of tiny new bees are about to hatch. And the hive drama, oh, it's coming. Think less peaceful garden pollinators and more tiny gladiators in a soap opera you didn't know you needed. But for now, I'm just relieved that the queen is safe, the bees are home, and my suit is finally zipped all the way. So it's been about 10 days since my bees moved into their brand new apartment, aka the cabinet I converted into a hive, and things are starting to heat up. The queen is settled in, she's strutting around like she's on MTV. Cribs, welcome to my palace. I got workers on call, 24/7 free food service. And oh yeah, I'm about to have thousands of kids. Yeah, thousands. Because when you're a queen bee, maternity leave isn't really an option. She's laying eggs faster than a college kid hitting the snooze button on finals week. By day 11, I checked the hive and saw the very first tiny white grains stuck in the cell's bee, eggs. Each one looked like a microscopic grain of rice, except instead of ending up in a burrito bowl, they're about to become flying sting machines. Now here's where it gets wild. After 3 days, each egg hatches into a larva. These things look nothing like bees. At first, they're more like little wriggly maggots. If you showed one to your grandma, she'd probably scream and throw her slipper at it. But trust me, these ugly babies are the future. The nurse bees, aka the nannies of the hive, immediately step in. They start feeding the larvae this fancy diet royal jelly at first, then switching to a mix of pollen and nectar. It's like starting your kid on breast milk, then moving to mashed peas, except the peas are made of flour dust and sugar water. And here's the kicker. If the workers keep feeding a larva royal jelly exclusively, that larva doesn't grow into a worker, it grows into a queen. That's right. Queens are basically made, not born. It's like if you gave one baby filet mignon while all the others got peanut butter sandwiches and boom, filet baby grows up to be Beyonce. By day 15, the larvae are sealed up inside their wax cells like tiny little sleeping bags. They pupate in there, transforming from wormy blobs into full-on bees. I call this stage bee kindergarten because it's a bunch of kids in cubbies waiting to be released, and chaos is coming the moment nap time ends. Around day 21 it happens. The first worker bees start chewing their way out of the cells. Imagine a baby breaking out of the hospital nursery with a crowbar. That's what it looks like, tiny legs poking through the wax, a head popping out, then a fuzzy little body crawling into the world. They're wobbly, confused, and honestly pretty adorable, like newborn puppies that could stab you in the face. And then they immediately get jobs. No training, no onboarding, no welcome to the hive HR video. Nope. Day 1 of life, they're already cleaning up their own crib and helping feed the next generation. Seriously, if human babies worked like that, daycare would be free and society would collapse in happiness. Now by day 20, the hive is basically turning into a buzzing little city. Each bee has a role depending on her age, as her 3 days old cleaners. Their whole job is janitorial work. If a cell is dirty, they scrub it. If a bee dies, they drag the body out like tiny funeral directors. 4 10-days-old nurses. They feed the larvae nonstop. Imagine babysitting hundreds of screaming kids with 0 breaks. That's their life. 11 20-days-old builders and guards. They make wax, expand the hive, and stand at the entrance like bouncers at a nightclub. ID, please. No hornets allowed. No hornets. 21+ days old foragers. These are the daredevils that fly out into the big scary world to collect nectar and pollen. Basically the truck drivers and delivery workers of the hive economy. It's a perfect system. Every bee knows her role, every role matters, and nobody complains about their job on Twitter. Honestly, bees are more organized than half the companies in Silicon Valley. But of course, it can't all be sunshine and honey. Around day 18, I noticed something terrifying. Tiny reddish-brown dots on the bees' bodies. At first, I thought, oh, maybe it's just bee acne. Nope. These were Varroa destructor mites. Let me put this in human terms. Imagine if you had ticks the size of basketballs permanently attached to your body, sucking your blood and spreading disease. That's what Varroa mites are to bees. They feed on the developing larvae and weaken the adults, spreading viruses through the colony. They're like the Darth Vader of parasites, and once they show up, it's game on. The bees fight back, but here's the problem. Mites are tough. They're basically armored. Workers will try to bite them off, but it's like trying to chew through a motorcycle helmet. And the mites always go for the weakest bees first, hiding inside the brood cells where they're safe. Watching this unfold was brutal. I wanted to help, but every time I reached in, the bees would act like I was the clumsiest surgeon in the world. One wrong move and the whole hive would panic. And just when I thought the mites were bad enough, guess who else decided to crash the party? Wasps. That's right. By day 25, a gang of yellow jackets from a nearby nest showed up like neighborhood bullies looking to steal lunch money. The guard bees were ready, though. I watched them rush to the entrance, lock jaws with the wasps, and literally wrestle them to the ground. It was like UFC, but in miniature with wings. Some bees died defending the hive, but they took wasps down with them. True warriors. Meanwhile, the queen was in the middle of all this, laying eggs like her life depended on it, which honestly it did, because if the colony loses her, game over. By the end of day 30, here's where we stood. The queen had successfully laid hundreds of eggs, many of which hatched into brand new workers. The hive now had a workforce covering every role: nannies, janitors, guards, and foragers. We'd already had our first taste of parasites and predators, proving that life in the hive isn't just about making honey, it's about surviving constant war. And me, I had survived another 3 weeks of bee chaos. Sure, I'd been stung a dozen more times, dropped my camera into the hive once, don't ask, and screamed help at least twice. But I was starting to see something incredible. The hive wasn't just a bunch of bugs. It was a living, breathing superorganism. A city with rules, drama, and resilience that put humans to shame. So we made it through the first month. The babies are growing, the hive is buzzing, and I've officially earned my badge as that weird neighbor with 10,000 bees in his house. But the real drama, it hasn't even started yet. Because in the next chapter, the foragers will take flight. They'll travel miles in search of food, perform their famous waggle dance, and bring back the goods to feed the empire. But out there, it's a jungle. Predators, pesticides, storms, you name it. The bees are about to face their biggest challenges yet. Stay tuned. The real hustle is about to begin. By day 31, the hive wasn't just surviving, it was buzzing like a full-on city. The newborn workers from earlier weeks had grown up and joined the workforce, and suddenly it felt like the hive had turned into the busiest startup company in the world. Every bee had a bomb and nobody was slacking. Inside the hive, the cleaners were zipping around, scrubbing every cell like obsessive-compulsive janitors. No trash, no dirt, no nonsense. If a bee died, they carried the body out like little undertakers, marching it straight to the edge of the hive and dumping it in the grass. Harsh maybe, but efficient. The nurses were working overtime too, feeding hundreds of hungry larvae. They dipped their heads into cells, regurgitating food like living baby bottles. It looked gross, but it was beautiful in a weird parental sacrifice kind of way. Each larva squirmed and wriggled, demanding more food, and the nurses never stopped. Meanwhile, the guards had bulked up at the hive entrance. They weren't the young, wobbly bees anymore. These were bouncers standing tall, scanning every incoming insect like they were checking IDs at the hottest nightclub in town. A honeybee from the wrong hive tried to sneak in, rejected. A wasp thought he could raid the pantry, taken down in a buzzing pile of fury. The guards were relentless. But the real stars of the hive, at this point, were the foragers. Around 3 weeks old, the workers graduated into the most dangerous job of all, flying out into the world to gather nectar and pollen. These bees didn't just leave the hive, they became explorers, pilots, truckers, and treasure hunters rolled into one. Watching the foragers leave was like watching jets take off from an aircraft carrier. One after another, they launched into the sky, vanishing into the distance. Some traveled a mile, some 2, some even 3 miles to find the best flowers. And when they came back, their little legs were covered in bright yellow, orange, and even red pollen, like they'd just crashed into a box of powdered donuts. But here's the most incredible part: how they shared what they found. Back inside the hive, the foragers gathered in a circle and started to dance. Not just any dance, a waggle dance. They wiggled their butts in figure-8 patterns, vibrating and turning at precise angles. To the human eye, it looked hilarious, like bee TikTok. But to the other bees, it was a GPS map. The angle of the waggle told them the direction of the flowers, and the speed of the wiggle told them how far. It was high-level communication in the form of interpretive dance. The other workers watched, learned, and then zoomed out of the hive to follow the instructions. Suddenly, hundreds of bees were flying in the same direction, guided by nothing but the booty-shaking dance of their sisters. If there was ever proof that teamwork makes the dream work, this was it. Of course, not every mission ended happily. Some foragers didn't come back. Predators lurked everywhere, dragonflies snatching bees, mid-air spiders lying in wait on flower petals, and the ever-present wasps always eager for a fight. Each bee that returned home was a survivor carrying not just nectar, but the scars of battle. Back at the hive, the nectar was processed immediately. Workers spread it in cells, fanned their wings to evaporate the water, and slowly turned it into honey. Drop by drop, the golden liquid filled the combs. The smell was intoxicating, sweet floral alive. This wasn't just food, it was energy insurance survival. By day 45, the hive had doubled in size. Thousands of new workers filled the air, and the hum of their wings was so loud, it sounded like a distant engine. The queen, tireless as ever, kept laying more eggs. Every day she strutted across the comb, dipping her abdomen into cell after cell, planting the seeds of the future. Her pheromones kept the workers unified, reminding them that this wasn't chaos, it was order. It was family. But with growth came pressure. Too many bees in too little space. The workers built new combs as fast as they could, but the population kept exploding. The air inside the hive grew hotter, denser, more restless. The guards grew testier, the foragers impatient. Something was building a tension no one could ignore. And then came the storm. Not a storm outside, but a storm inside. A few workers began building new larger cells, queen cells. They fed the larvae inside nothing but royal jelly, fattening them up for royalty. It was the signal the colony was preparing new queens. The old queen sensed it too. Her pheromones were thinning, stretched too far over, too many workers. The hive was slipping from her control. She was still the mother, still the center, but change was coming. By day 60, the hive was overflowing with life, honeycomb glistening, workers streaming in and out in endless waves. It was beautiful, but it was unsustainable. The bees weren't just building a home anymore. They were preparing for something bigger, something inevitable. The hive was on the brink of war, not with the outside world, but within itself. By day 61, the hive was no longer a quiet city. It was an empire bursting at the seams. Too many bees, too much heat, too much tension. The air inside was thick with buzzing, and you could feel it. Change was coming. The workers had been building special cells bigger and longer than the usual ones. These were queen cells. Inside larvae floated in pools of royal jelly, destined to become queens. To the workers, this was insurance. To the old queen, it was a threat. For weeks she had ruled without question, her scent uniting every bee. But now the chemistry was shifting. The hive was preparing for succession, whether she liked it or not. By day 65, the first queen cell was capped. The moment it sealed, a countdown began. A new queen was on her way, and when she emerged, there would not be a peaceful handover. In the world of bees, there can be only one. The workers knew what was coming. They grew restless, pouring out of the hive in massive numbers. They clustered at the entrance, hanging in a thick curtain, and then, with a sudden roar, they lifted into the sky. Tens of thousands of wings beat in unison, and the swarm poured out like smoke from a fire. At the center was the old queen leading her loyal followers into the open air. It was chaos and beauty at once. A living cloud darkened the sky, twisting and folding in slow waves, then collapsing onto a nearby tree branch in a heaving, writhing mass. The swarm hung like a giant buzzing fruit, protecting their queen, while scouts searched for a new home. It was survival in action, brutal but brilliant. The old hive would go on without her. She would start again. But back inside the hive, the story was darker. The first virgin queen emerged from her cell trembling, and new but already armed with a stinger designed for one purpose: to kill her rivals. She stalked the comb, listening for faint vibrations. Inside the other queen cells, her sisters were still developing. She found one, pressed her body against it, and drove her stinger through the wax. The cell twitched. The rival inside never emerged. It was a silent war played out in the shadows of the hive. By the end of the day, only one queen remained. She walked the comb like a conqueror, her voice, her pheromones beginning to spread through the workers. The hive had chosen its future, but it had come at a cost. And the enemies outside, they had not been waiting idly. By day 70, raiders came. Wasps from a nearby nest descended on the hive, hungry for honey, eager for blood. The guard bees rushed to meet them, latching onto the intruders with jaws and stingers. The battle was savage. Bees died by the dozens, their bodies littering the grass, but the wasps pressed on. For hours the fight raged until the hive itself seemed to tremble with fury. In the end, the wasps retreated, but victory was bitter. The hive was weakened, its population thinned, its honey stores torn apart. And as if that weren't enough, a smaller enemy crept in: the hive beetle. Sleek and black, it slipped past the guards, laying its eggs in hidden corners. The larvae tunneled through combs, destroying brood and honey alike. The workers tried to chase them, but the beetle's shells were too tough. It was like trying to bite through armor. By day 75, the hive looked exhausted. Too many battles, too many losses. The workers dragged the bodies of their sisters out by the dozens, piling them into a graveyard at the hive's edge. They worked in silence, no dance, no song, just the endless march of the dead. And still the queen laid her eggs. Her body never stopped, cell after cell filled with the promise of tomorrow. She was fragile, untested, but relentless. The workers gathered around her, feeding her, guarding her, fanning her with their wings. Even as enemies closed in, even as death hung over the hive, they clung to her. She was hope. But then came the worst of all. The mites returned. Varroa Destructor had been hiding all along, breeding in the brood cells, waiting for the right moment. Now when the hive was at its weakest, they struck. Crawling across bees' backs, burrowing into larvae, spreading sickness. Some workers staggered drunkenly, their wings shriveled and useless. The queen herself carried mites clinging to her abdomen, draining her strength. Day after day, more bees fell. The hum of the hive grew quieter, thinner, desperate. Without help, they would collapse. And that was when I had to decide. Do I let nature take its course and watch 10,000 lives fade away? Or do I intervene, risking everything? And day 78, I chose to fight. I brought out the vaporizer loaded with formic acid. To the bees, it was dangerous. To the mites, it was death. I set it in the hive, turned it on, and waited. The fumes spread like a storm cloud. The bees hissed and swarmed, panicking in the acrid air. I stood back, heart pounding, praying I hadn't just doomed them all. Hours passed. The fumes cleared. The hive was still. Then I looked closer. Dozens of mites lay dead, their bodies scattered on the comb. The bees crawled weakly but alive. The queen, trembling, was still laying. Against all odds, they had survived. By day 80, the hive was quiet but healing. The bodies were cleared, the cells cleaned, the brood tended again. It wasn't victory, it was survival. And survival was enough. The hive had faced war, loss, and near extinction. And somehow they were still alive. By day 81, the hive was a battlefield, cleaned, rebuilt, and humming again with fragile determination. The mites were gone, the beetles pushed back the wasps, no longer circling. The bees were tired, their numbers reduced, but their spirit unbroken. The queen moved steadily across the comb, laying eggs in perfect rows. Each cell she filled was a promise: this colony will rise again. The workers rallied to her. They groomed her, fed her, shielded her. And around her, the next generation began to grow. Tiny white eggs hatched into larvae curled into pupae, and then the slow miracle began. By day 85, the first new workers started to chew through their wax prisons, emerging one by one into the light. Their bodies were soft and pale, at first wings crumpled, eyes cloudy. But within hours they hardened, darkened, and joined the living hum of the hive. The sound inside grew stronger each day. What had been a thin, weak buzz after the battles now thickened into a chorus, louder, brighter, filled with life. The hive was healing itself, cell by cell, bee by bee. By day 90, the foragers were back in full force. They launched from the hive entrance in steady streams, arcing over the garden and disappearing toward fields and forests. They came back heavy with pollen in every shade of gold, orange, and even purple. Their baskets bulged with nectar, their wings dusted with the powders of hundreds of flowers. The waggle dances returned, lively and insistent. The hive was once again a marketplace of directions and discoveries, each bee carrying news of the world outside. The honey stores grew. Cells glistened with golden liquid capped with white wax as the bees preserved their treasure. The air inside smelled thick and sweet, a perfume of flowers transformed into energy, survival, and comfort. By day 95, the queen's new brood filled entire combs. Thousands of young workers joined the ranks, and the hive swelled with motion. Guards stood firm at the entrance, nurses swarmed the brood chambers, and the queen walked steadily among them, the true center of it all. But survival had come with scars. The graveyard outside the hive was still there, a silent reminder of the battles fought. Bees do not forget. They carried on, but every wing beat was a testament to the sisters who had fallen. On day 98, the hive reached its peak once more. The population was strong, the honey stores rich, the brood chambers overflowing with life. The hum of wings rose into the warm air, a sound of triumph and defiance. From near collapse, the colony had become an empire again. And then on day 100, I tasted their gift. I pulled a single frame from the hive, heavy with honeycomb. The wax was capped in neat rows, each cell bursting with liquid gold. I broke a piece free, the comb sticky and dripping, and held it to my lips. The honey slid across my tongue, thick and sweet, richer than anything from a store. It tasted of clover, of wildflowers, of sunlit afternoons carried back on the wings of thousands of bees. It tasted of survival. The bees buzzed around me, unconcerned, still at work. They didn't care about my wonder, my joy, my gratitude. For them, this was simply life. Work, defend, build, die, repeat. A cycle older than history played out again and again, generation after generation. But for me, standing there with honey on my hands and the hum of the hive in my ears, it felt like something sacred. In 100 days, I had seen their battles, their losses, their victories. I had watched them march, fight, and rebuild. I had watched a queen lay the foundation for an empire, and I had seen that empire nearly fall. But here they were, alive, strong, thriving. As the sun set on day 100, the hive was glowing with life. And I knew this was only the beginning. The bees would swarm again. One day, new queens would rise. Enemies would return. Their story never ends, but for now, the queen was safe. The colony was whole. And their honey-sweet, golden hard one was the proof of everything they had endured. And I thought to myself with a smile stung into my face 100 times over, this is crazy, but it's beautiful. And I wouldn't trade it for anything. Those days with my queen bee.